Welcome to the Real Estate 401k Show. Here are your hosts, Ryan Gerdes, Mike Weinstein, and Justin Frederick, helping you build a legacy of wealth through real estate. Powered by the Recon Group at West USA and the Frederick team with Fairway Mortgage. NMLS number 625918.
All right, well, it's been a long time since I've seen Paris Hilton in the news, but the family business is now in the news. Miller Global Properties has completed the disposition of Canopy by Hilton Scottsdale Old Town. So it's an incredible little hotel down there owned by Hilton. They are selling it, or they've sold it, I should say, to Dynamic City Capital for $102 million. This property is built in 2020, features 177 guest rooms and 2 restaurants, an outrider rooftop. Not sure what an outrider rooftop means. I'm just figuring you're the cowboy dude. Maybe you
I have no idea.
You might have a little bit of insight.
Bring your horses up there?
Yeah, I guess. And a Cobri kitchen. I don't know what that is either, but nonetheless, I didn't know it was for sale, but it has been purchased and sold by the Hilton. Ryan, what do we make out of this? And I want to really, and the reason I want to kind of start getting into the commercial.
Okay. We've seen crazy tourism over, just increasing, year over year over year. Hilton's always had their foothold in the market, particularly here in the greater Phoenix area. And they've just been making plays after play. And I know that they've been dabbling over there with the Hilton Squaw Peak, with different buyers, etc. They sold out a service contract to Blackstone not too long ago. And I know that COVID, they're kind of too big to fail. So they were able to do a lot of strategy, a lot of movement, and a lot of just doing money moves during those times in order to get ready for the big surge that was going to come right after COVID. Because we just saw this past year go nuts. With tourism and people just dropping cash, and then of course we all know that inflation, played into what the Fed is doing and what the bond is doing with our rates. We've talked about that for weeks and weeks here. So what do I make of it? Well, I think they're making a move to probably get a little bit more liquid, and I think that they're probably going to wait until this big surge kind of dies down a little bit, and then they're going to start spending money like crazy again. That's what I make of it.
Justin, are you a Paris Hilton fan? Walk me through your thoughts on Paris Hilton. I like her.
She's definitely out there and
she's
always
cute,
looking.
Cute
She's very
and cray
cute.
cray.
She's beautiful.
Cute and cray cray.
It's the unicorn scale.
That's a winning combination, right?
Yeah, like the crazy hot scale. We've all seen that on YouTube.
We're gonna get so trolled by this episode because I don't even know if Paris Hilton's involved in the family business. I don't even know whether they've sold Hilton property.
I would doubt
the
that
Hilton.
she's involved.
Yeah,
really.
But we need her to be. I would like to sell Paris Hilton a home.
Okay.
And so Paris, I called you cray cray. I didn't really mean it. I'm Ron Burgundy. I just read what's on the teleprompter, which Justin wrote. So Paris Hilton comes to town, and she wants to buy a house. Where are we showing her properties at?
PV.
Yeah, PV for sure.
Yeah.
She's probably more like a Scottsdale area, but PV's great.
Yeah, East PV.
Yeah.
Something that's going to be right there in between North and
Nothing's
South
probably
Scottsdale.
good enough for her, though.
I've got 4
She's gonna
bedrooms
have
in my basement. I
don't think she's a
rent one of those out.
basement type
Oh, thank God Mindy doesn't listen to this.
Oh God, this whole episode is just digressed and derailed and so forth. All right, well, let's try to get serious. If you are interested in learning more about commercial real estate, as much fun as we're having right now at the expense of Paris Hilton, we do know a thing of 3 about commercial transactions, commercial real estate, and the pros and the cons. And we'd love to sit down and personally have a conversation with you. And we're just going to do it. I probably should do something like text commercial, but dude, we got to do like text Paris to 623 AZ Recon.
Sure.
Again, text the word Paris to 623 AZ Recon. and especially if you know Paris, I would just like to invite Paris Hilton to come on this podcast.
You know what would be great is if she bought one of the new homes over there in the Ritz-Carlton development.
Oh my gosh, Paris, we got an inside scoop for you.
That is the biggest pool in the state of Arizona is being built at the new Ritz-Carlton. It's more than a resort. It's like a compound of resorts and shopping and malls and all. I mean, it's insane. And the dirt work took them years before they could even get vertical on that thing. So I'm pretty excited to see what that's going to do. And that being said, Hilton might have made a mistake. They might have sold too early because I feel the stock in that area is just going to skyrocket once the doors open up on that resort.
I was thinking the exact same thing as you were, and then I started just digesting this and going, well, I can rest assured that Hilton, the people at Hilton, are probably smarter than me because
they know a thing or two about it.
Because most people are. I just always run that under that assumption that you're smarter than me, except for you, Justin. So what is it? So I just started thinking, what is it that Hilton knows? Because there has to be some motivation to offload this property. They've had to do their homework. They've had to do their research. What could they possibly know that would motivate them to offload this?
Well, I think that it was just like, hey, we either do it now or we wait 10 years when Ritz-Carlton is completely sold out. And there's a number of other developments going on there that they would either need to do it now or wait 10 years. And so they probably had an opportunity, and then they probably have another opportunity to where they're going to move that money. And so that's why they said, all right, let's just go pull the trigger now.
All right, if you're interested in learning more about commercial real estate, commercial transactions, all you got to do is text the word Paris to 623-AZ-RECON. That's Paris to 623-AZ-RECON. All right, and Ryan, in full disclosure to our podcast listeners, you're our resident commercial expert. I stay in my lane. If somebody wants to do commercial real estate, I hand them off to you because that's your area of expertise. And I know that every type of transaction, and there's a million different types of commercial real estate opportunities out there. But if I'm not going to say a novice investor, but I'm just thinking about getting into commercial real estate, what are some things that I need to know? What are some things that I need to take into consideration? And then I'll let Justin jump in as far as the financing, because I don't think there's a 3-2-1 buy down option for a commercial piece of property.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I love about commercial is that it is a little bit more wild west. There's not a whole lot of government entities out there protecting you per se. Like with residential rentals, you have the Arizona Landlord Tenant Act, and it's totally there to protect the tenants. But with commercial, you're expected to walk in there with some knowledge. You're expected to go in there and be savvy. And if you make some wrong decisions, that's on you. It's going to be a little bit more fast and free out there. And so that's why these transactions end up taking a long time. Development transactions, they take forever, right? They can take 4, 5, 6 years for them to just get done with their due diligence when it comes to permitting, whenever it comes time to what they usage, whether or not it's going to or what the numbers are when it comes to if you're starting up a restaurant, all the other restaurants around, or if you're doing IT or if you're doing medical, you don't want to be too close and you don't want to be too far. And then you see like convenience stores, they're always on the same corner, and which is totally opposite compared to like what you would do with medical. You never see two hospitals right next to work.
And there's a lot more, depending on your service, there's a lot more government regulations.
Oh, for sure.
Depending on what it is you're producing. But I think you bring up an interesting point when talking about contracts. If you buy a residential home in Arizona, we have one basically residential contract that we use that's been approved
like and, a boilerplate,
and developed by AAR. In commercial,
nope.
You don't know. I can't think of a more important scenario than to one, hire a expert, and two, hire a real estate attorney. I would say this: if you got into a commercial contract without a real estate attorney, it's not it's not going to end well.
No. And it's funny. Do you remember in real estate school, and they probably had it even in lending school? Is that what they call it, lending school?
Let's call it that. Yeah.
Lending school. All right. A common term is meeting of the minds. In residential resale, I don't know when. I mean, rarely would a buyer sit down and meet with a seller and negotiate terms and what. But in commercial, I mean, you have several of those before pen ever even hits paper, because we need to figure out all kinds of different things before we even decide if there's a path there. And then once the contract's signed, then that's when the buyer spending and seller are spending thousands of dollars figuring out what can and can't be done. Obviously, in rental situations, they can move a little bit faster, and they're not nearly as complex just because not owning anything. But I think, like, going back over here to the Hilton deal, we have so many anchors over there. Anchors are big commercial companies, whether it's retail or going back to medical, like Target would be an anchor. McDonald's could even be considered an anchor. And then surrounded by those, you're going to have the small little mom and pop shops that are there for diversification, right? And so with them, we are very saturated with anchors over there. I mean, every top-notch brand name, whether it be Coach or Neiman Marcus or Costco's and all those things, they're all over there. And they're kind of shoving the mom and pop stuff out. There's definitely some very affluent mom and pops that can afford to be into those places, but they're fewer and far between. So I think that there's going to be a play for some more local businesses to be put into some of those surrounding little outlier areas, because there's still a lot of land over there to be developed.
All right, well, I blame you for this, Ryan.
Okay.
You brought up McDonald's. I always have thoughts and opinions about McDonald's. So McDonald's, I think, has seen a decline in sales, right? And McDonald's would tell you it's about the health of the country and everybody becoming health conscious and things like that. I would contend that. Here's where McDonald's went wrong and went awry, because there you go.
I'm interested.
Okay, 3 reasons. Number 1, they got rid of the grimace. Number 2, they got rid of McDonald Land cookies. And number 3, where they lost me, when all of their commercials started being all about hip hop.
Wow.
That's
where you went.
I would have never picked that out.
I wouldn't have picked one of those.
I didn't even realize.
I wouldn't have picked one of those.
For all I knew, Grimace was still around. I don't know. I haven't been to McDonald's
Little known fact. McDonald's was sued by this old television show called HR Puffin Stuff, way before your guys' time. And they had a character that kind of looked like the Grimace, and so they had to get rid of the Grimace. But the Grimace is one of the greatest of all times. Grimace for 2024.
Is the Hamburglar still around?
Yeah,
the Hamburger was
cool. The Hamburger was cool. And then, like, the new Ronald McDonald that they launched, he looked like a pedophile. It just.
Oh, the one at the Ronald McDonald house where we do all of her volunteering at? That one is creepy as hell.
I'm just going to ask, you don't think they all look like.
Oh, I don't like clowns to begin with. No.
Is Ronald McDonald a clown?
Jesus.
Wow.
All right. Anyways, let's wrap this up, Justin. How different is
it's very
the commercial financing? Give me a couple of highlights, the differences between getting a commercial loan as opposed to a residential mortgage.
Well, it's very different, and this is not my lane. I typically do residential lending. I do all residential lending, and but I get a little taste of commercial lending because I'm handing people off. But you have an SBA loan, and then you have portfolio loans, and basically banks just loaning you money based on their qualifications for you. Now, the big difference is typically when you buy it's always when you buy a residential loan, we're following guidelines to get you that loan. Once the loan's closed, you're done. With commercial lending, typically you're still going through health tests. as the years keep going on, and they're checking out if you're staying on. They have some influence on the way you're running your business. And so that's very different in my world. I tend to run across business owners that when I'm collecting their documents, they just have me collect it from their commercial lender because they're continuing to stay on top of
Commercial
taxes.
lender has everything.
Yeah, they do. They have everything: bank statements, taxes, everything.
Way more of a microscope.
Yeah, and so I mean, it makes it easier on my level, but I can only tell you from experience what they go through as a business owner with taking loans through commercial lending, and it's hefty.
Now, Ryan, typically, well, I'm not going to say typically, obviously, you're getting a commercial loan because you have a business. And every once in a while, and I've got my 17-year-old son, Quentin, in studio, so we go on these walks and we talk about business and stuff. And I think it was a couple weeks ago, I said, listen, there's a gazillion ways to cut corners and to save a buck. If you're starting a business, your attorney and your accountant is not where you cut corners. You start with the best.
Yeah, and you should constantly be shopping. So I mean, it's all about relationships. I get that, and if someone's doing good for you, you keep them. But it's an and, not an or, right? So you might have multiple attorneys looking at something. You might have multiple tax professionals looking at multiple contractors before you're actually pushing buttons on these things. Whereas residential, there's not nearly as much risk of loss, right? Because you can make one small turn, get sued, and then now all of a sudden you can have a multi-million-dollar investment just go right down the drain. And while I am a little bit more well-versed in commercial than maybe you, but still residential is my bread and butter, and so I mean, like, I would be going way outside of my lane, even myself, to go over there and try to make some of these decisions without having an attorney and having my tax consultant weigh in on every decision.
Well, dude, your bread and butter is your homemade lasagna.
Oh, you like that?
Yeah, I love that. It's hard to imagine that we started this episode talking about Paris Hilton.
Went down to McDonald's, and now we're talking about
Grimace,
Ronald McDonald.
From Paris Hilton to the Grimace and to Ronald McDonald. Well, if you've got questions about commercial real estate, or at the very least want to be introduced to our contacts, whether it comes down to a real estate attorney, a trust attorney, to our accountant, Cindy, who's the very best on the face of the planet, and or you want to strategize on how to get into the commercial game, or if you have commercial real estate and you're trying to strategize and figure out what you want to do next, all you got to do is text the word Paris to 623-AZ-RECON. That's Paris to 623-AZ-RECON.
Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate 401k Show. If you want more information on how to build wealth, click on the link or text us at 623-297-3266. That's 623-AZ-RECON.